Greetings and salutations. It has been a while, Seahawks fans, but I thought that with our coach search probably going to wrap up within the next couple of days, I wanted to get my thoughts out there on kind of the ideal coaching scenario. I'm going to miss Pete Carroll. I appreciate his culture building, but the defense has just been on a steady decline, and it was apparent it wasn't working. And I remember at the beginning of the offseason last year, I believe it was on Matty Brown's website. I think there was an article about Pete and how he had never been so involved in crafting an offseason, like being really involved in the offense, being really involved in the defense, making sure that he had his personal stamp on it. And to see the kind of results that we had defensively, it's just not acceptable. So I can understand why Pete is no longer the coach of this team, and while I'll miss his character, I will not miss his defensive scheme any longer. It just was unbearable at times. So, moving on, you think, do we want a defensive-minded head coach? What KJ Wright keeps saying, we can have good defense and continue the culture if we hire Dan Quinn. I'm not really interested in that, to be completely honest. I don't think Dan Quinn his defense has been that great. Without, some superstars. And while that can be said for a lot of people, I mean, contrast that with someone like Patrick Graham, who we had interviewed the Seahawks twice. Patrick Graham has done, how they have that saying, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. Patrick Graham made chicken salad out of chicken shit. They had Max Crosby and no one else on that defense last year, and they did fantastic, especially the last half of the year. They had a huge dead money hit from Chandler Jones. Chandler Jones wasn't playing. It was just Max Crosby and a slew of people that were developed by the Raiders organization that stepped up to the plate and played really well down the stretch. No household names at all other than Max Crosby. And that was like a $40 million defense, I think, is what one of the Raiders reporters said on the Dan Dean's show. Cheap-ass defense, finished in the top 10. I think that Patrick Graham did an excellent job. Now, he has kind of a Tony Dungy vibe where he's kind of quiet and he's not very charismatic. I watched all these interviews from all the top head coaching candidates that the Seahawks brought in, and some of them were kind of hard to watch. But both him and Ben Johnson, who was, my favorite for the spot, both coached Senior Bowl teams within the past couple of years. Ben Johnson had the enviable task of coaching, Malik Willis and Sam Howell, stuff in that awful quarterback draft of a couple of years ago. Was it 2019? I don't remember what actual year it was. It was very recent. Was it 2021? Whatever it was an awful quarterback draft, and Ben Johnson worked with those quarterbacks, and watching him interact and trying to coach them and stuff was actually pretty inspiring. He had a lot of great stuff to say, and I really liked his style. I had read some reports saying that he came off as a bit arrogant, but I didn't get that feeling at all. Watching his interviews, he came across as eloquent and thoughtful in his responses. I thought it was actually pretty refreshing. Contrast that with Mike McDonald, the Ravens defensive coordinator, who came across as very coach-speaky, speaking a lot of platitudes. He kind of, I don't know, he kind of had I guess he worked with Jim Harbaugh, so he kind of had that Harbaugh kind of feel to it, like a Michigan coach. But there's no doubt that what the Ravens have done on defense historically has been pretty enviable. So I can totally see Mike McDonald being a finalist, but, I just would really rather see Ben Johnson. He really impressed me in his interviews. His offense has been astounding. I'd love to see him tangle with Kyle Shanahan more than what we saw during the championship game. The offense was really good. If it wasn't for just a couple miscues, the Lions could have been in the Super Bowl. And I can almost kind of see where he wouldn't want to leave, feeling like he has unfinished business. But I would really like to see that kind of offense. And they played a similar way. The two-headed monster at running back. They had Montgomery and Gibbs, and we have Ken Walker and Charbonnet. I see a lot of similarities between our offense and theirs, and I think we have more weapons and receivers, so I really think, that he can make Jackson Smith and Jigba come alive the same way that Amon-Ra has in Detroit. I just think that there's a lot of plug and play with our offense and Detroit's offense, and I think Ben Johnson can come in here and just elevate us just that little bit, right? Although I can see why he's front runner for the Commanders too. I mean, that's a really appealing job. I think if I was a new head coach, I would probably rather go to the Commanders. New ownership, I mean, it can only go uphill from Dan Snyder, right? They have all that draft capital, the ability to put in a new quarterback, and even Sam Howell, well, down the stretch maybe not have been so great. I think there's still some potential there to grow and maybe be a trade piece later on to get even more draft capital. I mean, that Commander's job is looking great, although living in DC sucks. So, I mean, if you're going to think about that, I'd much rather live in Seattle than I would in DC. And I lived in Virginia for many years, and it was awful. So, I think that Ben Johnson, that's my hope, right? Ideally, we get Patrick Graham as defensive coordinator away from the Raiders. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if that's what we're allowed to do. I don't know if the new staff there would allow him to leave. I don't know if he wants to leave. But talk about turning around to defense. I think he would be amazing. Now, Mike McDonald could do it too, from a head coaching position, put someone he wants, as defensive coordinator, maybe pick his staff at that point. Although, I know Schneider says that he has, control of the coaching staff. I'm sure he's not going to hire someone that a new head coach wouldn't want to work with. But ideally, Ben Johnson as head coach, Patrick Graham as defensive coordinator, and as offensive coordinator Frank Smith from Miami, another players coach. I haven't talked about him yet, but he has a great story, very inspiring. A players coach. Both him and Patrick Graham are developers. They understand what players need. They understand how to coach them, how to tailor their approach to different personality types to get the most out of them. It's just an approach that I really appreciate. And Frank Smith sees the players as individuals. He sees them as people to develop and invest time in their personal lives and in their professional lives. He helped out Darren Waller a lot, blossomed when he was with the Raiders. Bring him out of his alcoholism and helping him become sober and really helping him develop as a player. That was Frank Smith, man. Darren Waller says it's the best coach he's ever had. So while Mike McDaniel gets a lot of the credit, I think Frank Smith was instrumental in developing that Miami offense, really good Miami offense that dropped 70 points on Denver. I would really like to see my ideal scenario. I wanted to lay it out here before anything happened. I'd love to see Ben Johnson, Patrick Graham, and Frank Smith as like our coaching triumvirate going forward. That would be an ideal scenario. Far-fetched, I know, but I just wanted to document it for future reference because you can either look back on it later on saying it was foolhardy when these people flop later on, or do that stroke of genius. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know anything. I'm just a fan. But if I were to script an off-season coaching search, it'd be Ben Johnson's head coach, Frank Smith as offensive coordinator, and Patrick Graham as defensive coordinator. I think that those three people would work excellent together and would form a team that would be formidable in the years to come. My two thoughts. All right, thank you guys. My two thoughts. That's like one thought. Anyway, I appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time. Hopefully things will develop and it'll be pretty badass. All right, guys, take care. Bye.